I would like to continue now by inviting the ambassador from Belarus, Ambassador Mironchik, Dmitry Mironchik. We expect great cooperation in light of the Belt and Road between China and Belarus, and Ambassador will highlight and express how this works. So thank you very much, Ambassador Mironchik.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Brower. Indeed, if we look at the map, which is right behind you, you'll see the main crossroads of the BRIX BRI in Europe is Belarus. And that's why we are, first of all, proud of it, but also very keen to keep the momentum, keep developing this cooperation between Belarus and China, which benefits also other members of the Belt and Road Initiative and beyond that, because this creates a very important land bridge between Asia and Europe, between China and the West. I'm sorry, I've been struggling a bit with technical problems at the beginning of the seminar, but I hope that everything stays connected while I speak. Dear Ambassador, distinguished speakers and participants of the webinar, modern means of communications and mass media made us accustomed to so-called fast news. No story, no matter how breaking, stays in the public eye for more than 3 days. One flash news report is immediately replaced by a dozen others. As a result, instead of genuinely important topics, the public discusses the change of title of a member of some royal house or the obscene antics of some would-be celebrity. We should therefore, I'm absolutely sure, thank the Belt and Road Institute in Sweden for taking the initiative and providing us with the opportunity and platform to return to the topic, the theme of the 20th Congress of the Communist Party of China and its outcomes. Indeed, the significance of the Congress extends far beyond the horizon of the typical Western media attention span. Let me quote an Australian-born philosopher, Roman Krishnarik, who wisely noted, "It is so," and I quote, "it is so startlingly clear that Western political systems have become a cause of rampant short-termism rather than a cure for it. Many politicians can barely see beyond the next election and dance to the tune of the latest opinion poll or tweet." This author is critical towards Beijing, but even so, he could not deny that China has a reputation for being a country, I quote, "incredibly successful at long-term planning." Our panelists certainly know this, but for the audience, it is worth recalling the Chinese tradition of planning. Planning not for a year or even 5 years, but for centuries. Last year, China widely celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party. In his address to the Party Congress this October, President Xi described the centenary as one of the most important events for China in the past decade. He also highlighted the entry of socialism with Chinese characteristics into a new era and the accomplishment of the historic task of intensively eliminating poverty and comprehensively building a middle-income society. It is precisely the later two objectives that were planned to be achieved by the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party, and this has been accomplished. This is the best proof that one should take Chinese plans and planning process seriously and consider them when planning one's own actions, one's own country's development strategy. What is also extremely important is that Beijing's plans are distinctly constructive and evolutionary in nature. Therefore, taking them into account by other countries will only contribute to harmonious development in the world as a whole. The goals proclaimed at the 20th Congress of the Chinese Communist Party are bold ones. It is therefore particularly important for us to know what methods the Chinese leadership intends to use to achieve them. And this is the aspect that foreign diplomats ought to pay attention to in the first place, since everything that concerns Beijing's domestic politics is the sovereign domain of the Chinese people. In the context of foreign policy, the Congress declared that China will never seek hegemony or engage in expansion, and that China is firmly committed to an independent and peaceful foreign policy. These two messages, I call them key messages, have been consistent since the beginning of the period when President Xi Jinping assumed office as the leader of the Communist Party in Chinese leadership. It is noteworthy that, however, that to describe the current political situation, President Xi for the first time used the word blackmail, making an apparent reference to the policies and practices of some Western powers. But this is arguably rather an understated characterization of the rhetoric and policies that the current hegemonic power has been pursuing towards China, including in recent weeks and months. The echoes of this campaign have even reached Sweden. I think everyone remembers how the United States got Stockholm to refuse to cooperate with Huawei. You cannot but call it bullying and intimidation, and real friends and allies are not treated this way. That's why our Swedish colleagues tend to cancel it from their memory and never discuss it. In the wake of the Congress, in order to intimidate audiences, politicians and the media in the West have chosen the subject of one China policy and how it has been discussed during the Congress. Let me remind you that the Congress declared that the solution to the Taiwan problem is up to the Chinese people, and China will never give up the right to use force, but will seek a peaceful resolution of the issue. I repeat, a peaceful resolution of the issue. Not surprisingly, many in the Western media have emphasized in this statement the use of force, rather than the desire for a peaceful resolution, most of the time even omitting that. I'm not surprised by that. You know, I made some research in the Swedish media, and I will simply say that in the pages of the authoritative Swedish newspaper Dagens Nyheter, one finds immediately articles dedicated to the so-called wolf warrior diplomacy in relation to Chinese foreign policy. But I have never encountered there even a single reference to diplomacy, which is the term widely used in China, and which is describes principles, tools, and methods applied by the Chinese diplomatic service, and indeed China as a whole right now. I believe that it might be enriching and interesting for the audience here in Sweden to learn about diplomacy, maybe with the help of the Belt and Road Institute. I don't want to take too much space, but let me just point out one more aspect which we consider to be of importance, of significance for us, the timeline. The next milestone which the Communist Party of China is aiming at is the centenary of the People's Republic of China in 2049. By that date, Beijing aims to build a modernized socialist state, and the Chinese Communist Party is committed to continuing its struggle to turn China into a modernized socialist nation that will lead the world in terms of combined national power and international influence by the middle of this century. An important consideration for us all, although I hope to stay there also in 2049, is that there will be a halfway point between the centenary of the Communist Party in 2021 and the centenary of the People's Republic of China in 2049. And this is going to happen in 2035. The Chinese leadership can be expected to work particularly hard and use all possible tools to make meaningful progress towards the declared goal by the later date. Before 2035, there can be adjustments in tactics, but we shouldn't expect radical changes in strategy. And this is essential if we are to understand the rhythm in which China lives and build our own national strategies accordingly. This is the horizon, and this is the milestone we are setting ourselves when working on such important joint projects with China as the Chinese-Belarusian Industrial Park, which is the largest industrial park, Chinese industrial park outside China. When developing the connectivity projects, railroad projects between Belarus and China, helping to bring Chinese goods to the European markets and vice versa. This year, we added on additional project besides rail, which the capacity of which is used almost 100% now. We are developing land transportation possibilities. The existence and open character of Chinese development plans discussed and endorsed at the congresses of the Communist Party helps very much shape our own foreign policy and economic development goals. This is an asset. And this is an asset which I think is for everybody to use, regardless of their intentions and their desire to participate in Chinese projects, because we all know by now that you may like it or not, but you cannot ignore it. And the predominant part of the world likes these projects, is interested in these projects, and is directly involved in these projects. This forms a backbone and the grounds for the development of other nations. And this is of indeed great assistance. I think that this practice of long-term planning, this ability to concentrate resources on achieving principal goals of the countries is something we should all study and apply in our countries too. Thank you very much, and I'm eager to follow the discussions at our webinar. Thank you.